The evening train was packed like sardines in a can. Maya stood near the door, gripping the metal pole with her gloved hand, trying to maintain as much distance as possible from the bodies pressed around her. This was her daily struggle. Every evening at 6:15, she'd board the same crowded train, navigate through the same mass of tired office workers, and pray that nobody would bump into her. You see, Maya wasn't like most people. She had this rare condition that made her skin extremely sensitive to heat. Imagine feeling like your hand is touching a burning stove, except it's just someone's normal body warmth touching your arm. That's what life was like for her. Every handshake, every accidental brush in the hallway, every hug from a family member felt like touching fire. She'd learned to adapt, of course. Long sleeves even in summer, gloves whenever possible. Strategic positioning in crowds. She'd become an expert at reading body language. Predicting movements. Creating invisible bubbles of space around herself. Her friends joked that she moved through crowds like water, always flowing, never colliding. They didn't know it wasn't grace, it was survival. That Tuesday evening started like any other. The train lurched forward as it left the station. Maya adjusted her stance, recalculating the distances between herself and the businessman to her left, the college student to her right. Everything was under control. Then the train hit the brakes hard. Bodies stumbled forward in a wave. Maya felt someone fall against her right side, and before she could pull away, a bare forearm pressed against her own exposed wrist, where her glove had ridden up slightly. She braced herself for the familiar burning pain that would shoot up her arm. But it didn't come. Instead, there was heat. Yes, intense heat. The kind that should have sent her nervous system into panic mode. But something was different. Completely, impossibly different. The burning sensation was there, spreading from the point of contact up her arm. But it didn't hurt. It felt like she didn't even have words for it. Like electricity and warmth, and something she'd never experienced before all mixed together. Her heart started racing. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't supposed to happen. This never happened. In 17 years of living with this condition, every single touch had been the same kind of burning pain. Every single one. She jerked her arm away, stumbling backward into someone else, mumbling apologies. Her mind was spinning. What just happened? Why was that different? She looked up at the person who'd fallen into her. A tall guy, maybe late 20s, wearing a simple blue shirt, looking concerned. "I'm so sorry," he said, reaching out as if to steady her, then stopping himself. Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded, even though she wasn't okay at all. She was confused and panicked and feeling things she couldn't explain. Her arm still tingled where he'd touched her. Not in pain. In something else entirely. The train pulled into the next station. It wasn't her stop. She was supposed to ride 3 more stations to get home. But Maya pushed through the crowd and practically ran onto the platform. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to understand what had just happened to her body. She stood on the platform, breathing hard, staring at her wrist. The spot where his skin had touched hers looked completely normal. No redness, no swelling, none of the usual signs of a reaction. But she could still feel it. That warmth, that strange, unexplainable sensation that her brain didn't know how to process. People flowed around her, heading to exits and other platforms. The train doors closed behind her. She should call someone. Her best friend Priya. Maybe. Or her doctor. But what would she even say? That, for the first time in her adult life, human touch hadn't hurt? That it had felt good? That couldn't be right. That didn't make any sense. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice the footsteps approaching. Didn't hear someone call out, "Excuse me," until they were right beside her. Maya turned and her stomach dropped. It was him, the guy from the train. He'd gotten off too. He was standing there, a respectful distance away, looking genuinely worried. "I'm really sorry to bother you," he said, holding up his hands in a non-threatening gesture. "But you looked really shaken up back there. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Did I hurt you? Do you need medical help?" Dopk. Maya's mouth opened and closed. How could she explain? That yes, he should have hurt her, but he didn't? That his touch had done something impossible to her nervous system? That she was standing on this platform instead of going home because she was too confused to function? "I'm fine," she finally managed to say, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. "Your touch should have. I mean, usually when people—" She trailed off, realizing she was making no sense. The guy's expression shifted from concern to understanding. "You're heat sensitive," he said simply. It wasn't a question. "That's why you wear gloves. Why you were standing the way you were on the train, trying to avoid contact." Maya nodded slowly, surprised he'd figured it out so quickly. "And I hurt you when I fell against you." He looked genuinely distressed now. "I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful." "No," Maya said, then stopped. Because how could she explain that he hadn't hurt her? That the opposite had happened? That his touch had felt like something her body had been waiting for without knowing it? She looked at him properly for the first time. Really looked. Brown eyes, gentle face. The kind of person who got off a train at the wrong stop just to check on a stranger. And her arm was still tingling where he'd touched her, like her skin cells were trying to hold on to the memory of that contact. "You didn't hurt me," she said quietly. Retry Cisco. Expand K-row without heading. 800 words. In simple English words. Part 2. It should be interesting. And every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Agian the First. Say that don't use any violated word in my script. Write full story and safe story. ISCO expand K-row. Without heading. 800 words. In simple English words. Part 3. It should be interesting. And every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Agi and I. Say that don't use any violated word in my script. Write full story and safe story. ISCO expand K-row without heading. 800 words. In simple English words. Part 4. It should be interesting. And every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Agi and I. Say that don't use any violated word in my script. Write full story and safe story. ISCO. Expand. K-row. Without heading. 800 words. In simple English words. Part 5. It should be interesting. And every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Agi and I. Say that don't use any violated word in my script. Write full story and safe story. Show more part 2. Maya sat in her small apartment that night, staring at the wall like it held all the answers to the universe. Her mind kept replaying those 3 seconds on the train, over and over again. The warmth, the strange sensation that spread through her arm, the way her body had reacted to a simple touch in a way it never had before. She'd been 7 years old when the burning started. One summer afternoon, she'd been playing in the backyard when suddenly her feet felt like they were on fire. She'd run inside, screaming, and her parents had rushed her to the emergency room. The doctors had looked at her feet, run tests, and eventually diagnosed her with a condition so rare that most general physicians had never even heard of it: erythromelalgia. Even now, 17 years later, she sometimes struggled to pronounce it, a disorder that made the blood vessels in her body behave strangely, causing episodes of intense burning pain and redness. Heat made it worse. Touch made it worse. Stress made it worse. Pretty much everything made it worse. Her childhood had changed overnight. No more playing outside in the summer. No more running around barefoot. No more casual hugs from classmates. By the time she was a teenager, she'd built walls around herself so high that nobody could get close enough to accidentally hurt her. She remembered her first school dance. All her friends were excited, talking about who they hoped would ask them to dance. Maya had sat in the corner all night, watching couples sway together, knowing that if anyone touched her bare arms or hands, she'd end up in tears of pain. She'd gone home early, telling everyone she had a headache. That was the first of many excuses she'd learned to make. College had been slightly easier. She'd thrown herself into her art and design work, things she could do alone. She'd made friends, sure, but they all knew the rules. No surprise hugs. No grabbing her arm to get her attention. No casual physical contact that normal people took for granted. Her best friend Priya had been the most understanding. They'd met in a design class, and Priya had noticed right away how Maya flinched whenever someone got too close. Instead of asking awkward questions, Priya had simply respected her space. Over time, they'd become close enough that Maya had explained everything. Now, sitting in her apartment, Maya grabbed her phone and called Priya. It rang 3 times before her friend's cheerful voice answered. "Hey, what's up? You never call this late." "Something weird happened today," Maya said, her voice uncertain. "Weird how? Good weird or bad weird?" Maya took a deep breath. "I don't know. Maybe both. I was on the train, and someone bumped into me." There was a pause. Priya knew how serious that could be. "Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" "That's the thing," Maya said slowly. "It didn't hurt. Priya, someone touched my bare skin, and it didn't hurt." The silence on the other end lasted so long that Maya thought the call had dropped. "That's impossible," Priya finally said. "Maya, that's never happened before. Not once in all the years I've known you." "I know." Maya stood up and started pacing. "Trust me, I know. But it happened. This guy fell against me on the train, and his arm touched mine, and I felt the heat, that burning sensation I always feel. But it wasn't painful. It was something else entirely." "What do you mean? Something else?" Maya struggled to find the words. "It's like, you know how sometimes you touch something hot from the oven and your brain screams danger? It was that same intensity, but my brain wasn't screaming danger. It was like my nervous system got confused and interpreted the signal completely differently." She could hear Priya moving around, probably grabbing her medical textbooks. Priya was in her final year of medical residency and took everything seriously. "Okay, let's think about this logically," Priya said. "The same nerve signals can be interpreted differently depending on context, emotions, neurochemicals. There's this whole theory about how the nervous system can actually modify pain signals before they reach your conscious awareness." "In English, please," Maya said. Your brain might have been expecting pain, but something about this situation made it process the signals differently. Were you stressed? Relaxed? Thinking about something else? Maya thought back to that moment. She'd been in her usual careful state, monitoring her surroundings, trying to avoid contact. Nothing unusual. Except, he followed me off the train. She blurted out. What? Maya, are you safe? Where are you? No. No. It's not like that, Maya said quickly. He was worried about me. He thought he'd hurt me and wanted to make sure I was okay. We talked for a few minutes on the platform. He seemed really kind. And? Did you tell him what happened? I told him I had a heat sensitivity condition, but I didn't explain that his touch felt different. How could I? I don't even understand it myself. Priya was quiet for a moment, and Maya could practically hear the gears turning in her friend's medical brain. Maya, I'm going to suggest something, and I want you to hear me out completely. Before you say no. That's never a good start to a sentence. What if your body is trying to tell you something? You've spent 17 years interpreting every touch as a threat, training yourself to avoid all physical contact. But what if this person, this situation, somehow felt safe to your nervous system, safe enough that your brain processed the sensation differently? Maya stopped pacing. That sounds crazy. Is it? Think about it. You've read the studies. Chronic pain patients sometimes experience relief when they feel emotionally safe, when they're with people they trust. Your condition isn't just about blood vessels and nerve endings. It's about how your brain interprets signals. Maya sat down on her couch, pulling her knees to her chest. Could it be that simple? That complicated? That after all these years of living in fear of human touch, her body had suddenly decided one person's touch was safe? There's something else, Maya said quietly. I keep thinking about it. About that moment, and I want to feel it again. Is that strange? No, Priya said gently. That's called being human. You've been isolated for so long, Maya. Maybe your body is finally telling you that you don't have to be anymore. After they hung up, Maya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow morning, she'd go to her usual coffee shop before work. The same routine she followed every day. The same safe, predictable life she'd built for herself. But now, everything felt different. Because somewhere in this city was a person whose touch didn't burn, and she couldn't stop wondering what that meant. The morning sun filtered through the coffee shop windows as Maya stood in line, just like she did every weekday morning. She ordered her usual drink, found her usual corner table, and opened her laptop to review some design work. Everything was normal. Everything was routine. Everything was safe. Except her eyes kept drifting to the door every time it opened. She told herself she wasn't looking for him. That would be ridiculous. The city had millions of people. The chances of seeing the same stranger twice were basically zero. Besides, why would he come to this particular coffee shop? There were hundreds of cafes in the area, but 15 minutes into her second cup of coffee, the door opened, and there he was. Their eyes met across the room, and Maya's heart did this strange little jump in her chest. He looked surprised too, standing frozen in the doorway for just a moment before a smile spread across his face. He raised his hand in a small wave, then gestured toward the counter, as if asking permission to order first. She nodded. Maya watched him order, noticing details she hadn't seen the night before. The way he thanked the barista warmly. The comfortable way he carried himself. The slight nervousness in his movements as he glanced back at her table. He walked over slowly, coffee in hand, stopping a respectful distance away. Yeah, Maya said, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. Small world, I guess. Do you mind if I sit? He asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Or would you prefer I didn't? I don't want to intrude. There was something refreshing about how direct he was. No assumptions. No pushing into her space. Just a simple question. "You can sit," she said. He settled into the chair, maintaining that careful distance. "I'm David, by the way. I realized last night that we had this whole conversation and I never actually introduced myself." "Maya." "Maya," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "Listen, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about how I didn't hurt you. I work as a physical therapist, and I specialize in chronic pain management. What you described, about having a heat sensitivity condition, it sounds like you've been dealing with a lot." Maya wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. 17 years of a lot, since I was 7. That must have been incredibly difficult. His voice carried genuine empathy, not pity. There was a difference, and Maya had learned to spot it immediately. "I've worked with patients who have similar conditions, nerve disorders, hypersensitivity issues. The way pain isolates people is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Most people don't understand," Maya said quietly. "They think it's like a normal injury, or something you can just push through. They don't get that every single day involves calculating distances, avoiding situations, missing out on things that everyone else takes for granted." David nodded. "The invisible burden. That's what one of my professors used to call it. The constant mental load of managing a condition that others can't see." They talked for 20 minutes about pain, about the nervous system, about the strange ways the body processes signals. Maya found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did with people she'd just met. David spoke about his work with a passion that made it clear he actually cared about helping people, not just doing a job. "Can I ask you something?" David said finally, his expression becoming more serious. "And you can absolutely tell me it's none of my business. But yesterday, when you said I didn't hurt you, what did you mean exactly?" Maya hesitated. This was the question she'd been both hoping for and dreading. "Every time someone touches my skin, it burns. Like touching a hot stove. That's what my condition does. But when you fell against me on the train, I felt the heat. That intense sensation. But it didn't hurt. It felt different." "Different how?" She struggled to find the right words. "Like my nervous system got confused about what signal it was supposed to send to my brain. The intensity was there, but the interpretation was wrong. Or maybe right for the first time ever. I don't know." David leaned forward slightly, his expression fascinated. "Maya, there's this theory in pain management called the gate control theory. Essentially, the nervous system can actually modify pain signals based on various factors. Context, emotional state, even specific types of stimulation. What you experienced might be an example of that." "You mean my brain decided your touch wasn't dangerous?" "Something like that. Or maybe the particular frequency of nerve signals, combined with the context, created a different interpretation. The nervous system is incredibly complex." He paused, looking uncertain. "Would you be willing to try something? Just as an experiment?" Maya's pulse quickened. "What kind of experiment?" "Nothing invasive or uncomfortable, I promise. Just, could I hold your hand? Slowly, with your full permission at every step, so you can monitor what you're feeling? It might help us understand what happened." Every instinct Maya had developed over 17 years screamed at her to say no, to protect herself, to maintain the safe distance she'd worked so hard to establish. But there was a louder voice now, one that remembered those 3 seconds on the train and wanted desperately to understand them. "Okay," she whispered. David extended his hand slowly across the table. Palm up, giving her complete control. "Take your time. And if at any point it hurts, or you want to stop, just pull away. No questions asked." Maya stared at his hand for a long moment. His palm looked warm, alive. Normal body temperature that would feel like fire to her. She took a breath, and slowly reached out, her fingers trembling slightly. The moment her fingertips touched his palm, she felt it. That same sensation from the train. Intense heat spreading from the point of contact. But instead of the sharp, burning pain she'd known her entire life, it was something else. Something her brain struggled to categorize because she'd never felt anything like it before. "How does it feel?" David asked softly, his voice careful not to break the moment. "Like burning," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "But not painful burning. Like when you come inside from the cold and warm your hands by a fire. That kind of intense warmth." Slowly, carefully, she let her whole hand rest in his. His fingers closed gently around hers, and Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This was impossible. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it was happening. "I feel it too," David said suddenly, and something in his voice made Maya look up at him. His expression was stunned. Not pain, but intensity. Like there's something electric between our hands. I've held hands with hundreds of patients during therapy sessions, and I've never felt anything like this. They sat there in the corner of the coffee shop, hands connected across the table. Two people trying to understand something that science couldn't easily explain. Around them, life continued normally. People ordered coffee, tapped on laptops, chatted with friends. But in their small corner, something extraordinary was happening. Maya's phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the moment. A medical alert app she used to track her symptoms. Her heart rate had spiked significantly. Her skin temperature was elevated. Under normal circumstances, these readings would signal the start of a major episode. But she wasn't in pain. She was holding someone's hand, and she wasn't in pain. "I should probably go," she said reluctantly, slowly pulling her hand back. The loss of contact felt strangely hollow. "I have work, and this is a lot to process." Maya couldn't concentrate on anything that day. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen where a logo design was supposed to be taking shape, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Her right hand kept tingling, like it was trying to remember the feeling of David's palm against hers. She'd held someone's hand. Actually held it, skin to skin, for almost 2 full minutes. And it hadn't hurt. Her coworker, Rachel, stopped by her desk around lunchtime. "You okay? You've been staring at that blank screen for like 20 minutes. "Yeah, just tired," Maya lied, forcing herself to focus on the design. But she wasn't tired. She was terrified and excited and confused all at once. Because if David's touch didn't hurt, what did that mean? Was it something about him specifically? His body chemistry? His electromagnetic field? Or had something changed in her own nervous system after all these years? That evening, she found herself doing something she'd avoided for months. She pulled out her medical journals and research papers, the ones her doctors had given her over the years about her condition. She'd stopped reading them because they always said the same thing. Rare disorder. No cure. Manage symptoms. Avoid triggers. Live a careful life. But now she was searching for something different. Cases where symptoms changed unexpectedly. Studies about the nervous system's ability to rewire itself. Articles about how emotional states could affect pain perception. She found a case study about a woman in Sweden who'd had chronic pain for 15 years. The pain had suddenly decreased dramatically when she met someone who made her feel safe. The researchers theorized that the emotional connection had triggered the release of natural pain-relieving chemicals in her brain, essentially overriding the usual pain signals. Could that be what was happening to her? Her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. They'd exchanged numbers that morning before parting ways, both agreeing they needed to understand what was happening. "Hi," she answered, her heart rate picking up immediately. "Hi. I hope I'm not bothering you. I just couldn't stop thinking about this morning." "Me neither," Maya admitted. "I did some research this afternoon," David said. "Talked to a colleague who specializes in neurological disorders. Maya, what you're experiencing might be related to something called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways. After years of associating touch with pain, your nervous system might be learning a new association. But why now? Why with you specifically? That's what I can't figure out. Maybe it's not about me at all. Maybe you were just ready for this change, and I happened to be the first person you had extended contact with in a while. Or maybe there is something specific about the interaction between us that creates a different signal pattern. Maya walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. There's only one way to find out, isn't there? We'd have to test it. Controlled experiments, different types of contact, monitored conditions. I was thinking the same thing, David said. But Maya, I need you to know that I understand this is huge for you. Life-changing, potentially. And I don't want to push you into anything that might trigger a severe episode or hurt you. We can go as slowly as you need. Something warm spread through Maya's chest, and it had nothing to do with her condition. When have you ever met someone with chronic pain who gets to be careful? We spend our whole lives managing risk. At least this risk might lead somewhere good. They agreed to meet the next day at David's therapy clinic after hours, where they'd have privacy and access to monitoring equipment. Maya hung up and sat down heavily on her couch. Was she really going to do this? Deliberately expose herself to touch, the one thing she'd spent 17 years avoiding? But that night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about how David's hand had felt. That warmth that didn't hurt. That intensity that her brain had interpreted as something other than danger. For the first time in her adult life, she'd experienced human touch as connection rather than threat. The next evening, Maya stood outside David's clinic, her heart pounding. Through the glass door, she could see him setting up equipment in one of the therapy rooms, heart rate monitor, skin temperature sensors, a laptop to record everything. He was taking this seriously, treating it like the medical mystery it was. She pushed open the door and walked in. "Hey." David greeted her with a warm smile. "Thanks for coming. I know this probably feels strange. Everything about this feels strange," Maya said honestly. They sat down in the therapy room, and David explained his plan. They'd start with minimal contact, just fingertips, while monitoring her vital signs. If that went well, they'd gradually increase the contact, always giving her complete control to stop at any point. "Before we start," David said, "I need to tell you something. Last night, after we talked, I kept thinking about why this might be happening, and I realized something about myself that might be relevant." Maya looked at him curiously. "I've always been able to sense other people's pain," he continued. "Not in a magical way, but as a therapist, I've developed this deep empathy where I can almost feel what my patients are experiencing. It's part of what makes me good at my job, but it's also exhausting. I absorb their discomfort. And with me?" Maya prompted. "With you, I don't feel pain. I feel the opposite. When I touch your hand, instead of absorbing discomfort, I feel something I can only describe as recognition. Like my nervous system recognizes yours and responds to it differently than it does to anyone else." Maya processed this. "So you think we're both experiencing something unusual? Not just me? I think whatever is happening to both of us. Some kind of resonance between our nervous systems." They started the experiment. David held out his hand, palm up. Maya placed her fingertips against his, and immediately the sensors started registering changes. Her heart rate increased. Her skin temperature rose. But on her face, David could see something that wasn't pain. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Intense," Maya whispered. "Like every nerve ending in my fingers is firing at once, but it doesn't hurt. It's like my body is confused about what message to send my brain." They stayed like that for 5 minutes, then 10. The sensors continued to show elevated readings. But Maya's expression remained calm, even peaceful. Gradually, David interlaced his fingers with hers, Full hand-to-hand contact. Maya gasped softly at the increased sensation but didn't pull away. It's stronger now. The burning feeling. But it still doesn't hurt. David, how is this possible? I don't know, he admitted. But look at this. He turned the laptop screen so she could see the readings. Your vital signs are elevated, but they're stabilizing. Normally, with your condition, the readings would keep climbing until you had to break contact, right? Maya nodded, staring at the graphs. It's like my body is adjusting, learning that this touch is safe. They continued for another 20 minutes, trying different types of contact. His hand on her forearm, both hands clasped together. Each time, Maya felt that same intense burning warmth, but never pain. Her body was processing the signals completely differently than it had for 17 years. Finally, Maya pulled back, not because it hurt, but because she was overwhelmed. I'm sorry, she said, wiping at her eyes. I just never thought I'd be able to do this. Hold someone's hand without pain. It seems like such a small thing, but it's everything. David handed her a tissue, being careful not to touch her skin now that she'd indicated she needed a break. It's not a small thing at all. Maya, what you've lived with, the isolation you've experienced, most people can't even imagine it. And now your body is telling you that maybe things can be different. But what if it's only with you? Maya asked, voicing the fear that had been growing in her mind. What if my nervous system only responds this way to you specifically? What does that mean? What? David was quiet for a moment. Then we figure out why. And we see if the response can be transferred or learned with other people over time. Neuroplasticity works through repetition and pattern recognition. Maybe if your brain learns that touch can be safe with me, it might eventually generalize that learning. Or maybe, Maya said softly, my nervous system found one person in the entire world who doesn't cause me pain, and that's just how it is. They looked at each other across the therapy room, both understanding the weight of what that possibility meant. 3 months had passed since that first accidental touch on the train. 3 months of careful experiments, monitored sessions, and gradual discoveries. Maya sat in Dr. Patel's office, her neurologist of 15 years, watching the doctor review her latest test results with an expression that could only be described as amazed. These neural pathway scans are remarkable, Dr. Patel said, looking up at Maya. The pain processing centers in your brain are showing different activity patterns than they did 6 months ago. Not completely different, but definitely altered. Maya glanced at David, who'd come with her to this appointment. They'd decided weeks ago that this was bigger than just the two of them. This was medical history, potentially being made. I've been practicing controlled exposure to touch, Maya explained. With David's help. He's a physical therapist. And we've been conducting supervised sessions where I experience touch in safe, monitored conditions. Maya. Dr. Patel leaned forward with interest. And these sessions don't trigger your usual symptoms? They do trigger sensations, Maya clarified. The burning feeling is still there, the intensity, all of it. But my brain interprets it differently now, like it's learned a new language for the same signals. This is consistent with what we know about neuroplasticity, Dr. Patel said thoughtfully. The brain can rewire itself based on new experiences, especially when those experiences are repeated in safe contexts. But Maya, I have to ask, is this response specific to one person, or have you tested it more broadly? That was the question Maya had been both dreading and preparing for. We've started testing with others. Slowly. My friend Priya, my mother, a few of David's colleagues. The response isn't as strong as it is with David, but it's there. Touch doesn't hurt the way it used to. It was true. 2 weeks ago, Maya had hugged her mother for the first time in 12 years. Really hugged her. Not the brief, careful embrace they'd learned to do. Her mother had cried. Maya had cried. And yes, there was burning. But it was manageable, bearable, almost welcome because of what it represented. Dr. Patel smiled, something Maya had rarely seen from her usually serious doctor. This is incredible. I want to document this case. With your permission. Write it up for medical journals. Other patients with similar conditions need to know that change is possible. After the appointment, Maya and David walked through the city park near the hospital. It was a cool autumn evening, and Maya wasn't wearing gloves. Her hands were bare, exposed to the air and the possibility of accidental contact. 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Are you happy with how things are going? David asked as they found a bench overlooking a small pond. Maya considered the question carefully. I'm grateful. Amazed. Sometimes still confused. My life is completely different now than it was before that day on the train. I can hug my parents. I started going to yoga classes where people occasionally bump into each other. I'm even thinking about dating, which I never thought would be possible for me. That all sounds positive, David said. But something in his voice made Maya look at him more closely. But, she prompted. David was quiet for a moment, watching ducks glide across the pond. But I keep wondering what this means for us. We've been so focused on the medical aspect, on understanding and documenting what's happening, that we haven't really talked about the personal side of this. Maya's heart rate picked up, and for once, it had nothing to do with her medical condition. What personal side? Maya, we've spent almost every day together for 3 months. I hold your hand more than I hold anyone else's hand. I've learned the sound of your laugh, the way you scrunch your nose when you're thinking hard about something, how you take your coffee. And somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a medical mystery for me. David, Maya started, but he continued. I know the circumstances are complicated. I know we met because of your condition, and that your nervous system responding to me might be purely physiological. But I need you to know that how I feel about you isn't physiological. It's not about nerve signals or neuroplasticity. I care about you. A lot. Maya sat very still, processing his words. She'd felt it too, that shift from clinical interest to something deeper. The way her heart jumped when she saw his name on her phone. The way she found herself telling him things she'd never told anyone. The way being with him felt like home. I care about you too, she said softly. But David, how do we know what's real and what's just my nervous system being grateful for someone who doesn't cause me pain? How do I know if what I feel is genuine or just relief? That's something I can't answer for you, David said. But I can tell you that feelings don't have to have just one source. Maybe you care about me partly because I don't cause you pain. That's okay. And maybe I care about you partly because helping you has been the most meaningful thing I've done in my career. That's okay too. Feelings are complicated. They come from lots of places. Maya reached out and took his hand, still marveling at the fact that she could do this simple gesture. The burning warmth spread up her arm, but now she recognized it for what it truly was. Not just nerve signals being misinterpreted. Not just neuroplasticity in action, but connection. Human connection that her body had been craving for 17 years. I spent so long believing I'd never have this, she said, looking down at their joined hands. Never be able to hold someone's hand, or hug someone I cared about, or feel close to another person in any physical way. I built my whole identity around being untouchable. And now I'm not anymore, or at least not in the same way. It's terrifying and wonderful all at once. You don't have to figure everything out right now, David said gently. We can take this as slowly as you need. Keep doing the therapy. Keep expanding your ability to tolerate touch. And let whatever is happening between us develop naturally. Maya smiled. That's very therapist-like advice. Well, I am a therapist, he said with a grin. It's literally my job to help people work through complicated situations. They sat on that bench as the sun set, hands intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. About Maya's childhood dreams, before the pain started. About David's decision to go into physical therapy after his grandmother suffered from chronic pain. About the strange way the universe had brought them together, on a crowded train. 6 months later, Maya stood in an art gallery, surrounded by her design work being displayed for the first time in a public exhibition. Friends, colleagues, and strangers moved through the space, occasionally touching her arm to get her attention or offering congratulatory hugs. Each touch still carried that burning sensation, but Maya had learned to interpret it as just another form of sensory input. Information, not threat. Priya appeared at her elbow, beaming with pride. Look at you. Maya Chen, successful designer, hugger of people, living her best life. It's still weird sometimes, Maya admitted. I catch myself being surprised that touch doesn't hurt, even though it's been months. That's trauma, Priya said seriously. 17 years of associating touch with pain doesn't just disappear, but you're rewriting that story. That's huge. David arrived later in the evening, straight from work, still in his therapy clinic clothes. He made his way through the crowd to Maya, and without hesitation, she stepped into his arms for a hug. The burning was there, as it always was, but wrapped up with it was warmth, safety, and belonging. I'm proud of you, he whispered against her hair. Not just for this exhibition, but for everything, for being brave enough to challenge what you thought was unchangeable. Maya pulled back to look at him. I couldn't have done it without you. Literally. You were the first person whose touch didn't hurt. Maybe, David said thoughtfully. Or, maybe you were ready for change, and I just happened to be there at the right moment. Either way, I'm glad I was there. As the evening wore on and the gallery gradually emptied, Maya found herself reflecting on the past 6 months. Her life wasn't perfect now. She still had episodes where her symptoms flared. She still had to be careful about heat exposure and stress. The condition hadn't disappeared, but everything had changed anyway. Because she'd learned that her body wasn't the enemy. That the burning sensation she'd feared for so long was just her nervous system's way of processing intense stimuli. And with the right context and the right people, that intensity could be transformed into something meaningful rather than painful. She'd learned that isolation wasn't safety. That protection wasn't the same as living. That sometimes, the things we fear most hold the key to what we need most. And she'd learned that human connection, in all its burning, intense, overwhelming complexity, was worth the risk. Maya stood at the gallery window, looking out at the city where months ago she'd fled from a stranger's accidental touch. Now that stranger was the person who knew her better than almost anyone. The person who'd helped her discover that her body wasn't broken, just speaking a language she hadn't yet learned to understand. The burning warmth she'd feared for 17 years had become the sensation she associated with connection, with trust, with the courage to let someone close. Her nervous system hadn't betrayed her all those years. It had just been waiting for the right moment, the right person, the right context, to show her what it was really capable of feeling. And now, finally, Maya understood. The burn wasn't the problem. The burn was her body's way of feeling everything intensely, completely, fully. She'd spent years trying to avoid that intensity. But maybe intensity wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was something to embrace, carefully and with the right support, as a sign that she was truly, deeply alive.